So that's our why, that's our story a little bit, but we're not here today to talk about SDN story so much as we are here to talk about our member company story. That's represented here on the screen behind me, our 17 member owner companies who have been the beneficiaries of some of the different programs that have been talked about this morning, who have invested their own time and resources and dollars to bring fiber optic internet to as many consumers as possible. They're passionate about it and proud to be a part of that industry and that goal. A little background on me. I'm Roni Dutton, Vice President of Sales and Marketing at SDN. I literally grew up in this industry. I used to work summers of my high school years digging ditches for my local phone company. So this was in the 90s, and we were putting in second lines as fast as we could during a time when there was dial-up internet. A few folks in the room probably remember dial-up internet. So we put in second lines so people could talk and surf the web at the same time. It was this novel concept, right? And I can remember being on the outside plant crew, and one of the guys who later in life, ironically, was my next door neighbor, his name was Vern, worked for the local phone company where I lived, and we're putting in the second line, we're putting in DSL, and he looks at me and he says, "This DSL is so stupid." He goes, "What's the customer ever going to do with 256K to the home?" Well, boy, what a how times have changed, and we'll talk about the speeds that we're looking at here now. So we've got some great customer stories here today. Let me join me in welcoming Dave and Roni Daale, Sara Steever, Mark Mueller, and Ross Petrick to talk about some of the stories that they have in terms of how internet has, and broadband internet, specifically fiber, has impacted their lives. So if you'd welcome the panel. So your guys' instructions, just pretend it's just us, they're not even here. We're just gonna have a conversation about kind of your experience in terms of what internet was like in the past and what it's like now with kind of this new day and age when you've got fiber optic internet. Before we get into some of your individual stories and I start asking you some questions, if we could just go down the line, if you could introduce yourself, tell a little bit about maybe your business. We'd love to drive some business to you as well if possible. So if you want to start.
My name is Mark Mueller, Big Stone City, South Dakota. I didn't know I was going to be the first one, so I farm with our family. We also have, my wife has she stays at home and has a accounting, bookkeeping business at home. And then we also have agritourism business, but we call it Big Stone Pumpkin Patch, and we are open in September and October. I think we've done it 12 years now, so that's my story.
I'm Dave Daale, and Roni and I together own Dave Daale Realty and Roni Daale Company greenhouse. I am the one that keeps your company. She has the greenhouse. We're only open from April through the first week in June, but it takes 9 months out of the year to keep the greenhouse going.
I'm Roni Daale. If anybody likes flowers, that pink one there is called the Sumo, and that's one flower in a wash tub by itself.
Hi, Sara Steever. My husband and I moved a house up from Gayville, South Dakota to near Lennox about 30 years ago. And then we opened Steever House Bed and Breakfast 27 years ago. So come on out, we have 5 rooms, 5 guest suites, and excited to tell you guys about our story. Thank you.
So if you hand the mic back to Ross, before we get into your individual stories, Ross Petrick, CEO of Alliance Communications, one of our member owner companies. Ross, can you just kind of share some of your story about Alliance's journey in terms of building out fiber optics and kind of how ConnectSD dollars have impacted you, and anything else you want to share that's relevant?
Yeah, I guess, if you're the other Ryan, I guess I'm the Kara, so I wasn't overly prepared for this, but I can, good thing is I'm talking about something that we've been living here for the last 5 years as far as the expansion stuff goes. But Alliance has been a co-op in the area for 68 years now. In the Brandon, Baltic, Crooks, kind of that area, down to Alcester and up to Howard as well. And so back in 19, when the program started, we started looking at some of these edge out areas, and really we started looking at a lot of the places where we were getting requests. that was the first place we go to. Obviously, it's supply and demand. I'm an economist by trade, and a dad by something else. But I talked to the kids about that, and they're like, "Where do you go? How do you know where to build next?" And I said, "Well, we just look at the sign-up sheets, look at the people that are calling, people that need it. We're not going to go to some place that doesn't need it." And at least they understand that, and that's just as simple as it is. So we started out small, just kind of little projects here and there, kind of test the waters. They didn't have a lot of funds back when we started compared to what we have now, and we also tied in some RDOF and some Reconnect as well, and made that accounting mistake. So the accounting and inventory team found that a very challenging effort, but we did it properly. I think Jeff Simmons can probably shed a tear with me as well as far as that experience goes. But so some of these projects that we had done here, some more recent, and Fairview has been a couple years ago now. So and they kind of fit into our area as well. We cover the Alcester and Hudson area, so it was kind of easy to go over and see if Fairview needed some broadband. And then we're working on the North Lincoln County and the Central Lincoln County in that area, kind of moving south, and that was obviously when we hit around the Lennox area. So it was kind of just a fit. The one other thing that we do is whether they're not co-op members yet, we treat everybody like a co-op member. So if the want and need is there, we pretty much just say, you're part of the community, you're part of us, you're part of our network, and we treat you like that. In typical small town, I got connections as far as a network too. Found out I grew up, 25 miles away from where he lives. My mom actually taught at Revillo for many times. It's typical small town. We're probably cousins. But and that's the other thing too is this state is such a small town, and you have to do and serve the communities that you're in and around, because if you're not a relative of them, you're a friend, or your staff has a relative in that area, and it's been very interesting to see the connections we've made with these new communities, and it's been nice and hear the uplifting stories about not only the broadband but economic development and just family development.
Great. Well, if you want to pass the mic down to Dave and Roni, we're going to start with you folks there. I got some questions for you, but before, I'd like to just share your bio with everybody. Roni and Dave Daale have lived in the same house in Fairview near the South Dakota-Iowa border for 34 years. They've owned and operated Dave Daale Realty and Roni Daale and Company Greenhouse out of their home for 20 years. For most of that time, their internet service was poor. They had a dish, but it would lose service every time a cloud came over. Another provider put in copper lines, but their internet would not keep up with the demand. Before Alliance came in, they had no cell phone service and would have to get a booster on their computer for Verizon to work in the house. They had to buy two-way radios, old school there, two-way radios, so they could communicate between greenhouses. ConnectSD grants and Alliance changed that, and they haven't had any issues first. So let's get into some of the questions for you folks. Either one of you, I'm just curious, if you could describe, what your internet service was like, 5 to 10 years ago. And I have some insight to that because our marketing specialist, Michael Klinsky, did kind of a pre-interview and provided me some notes. So remember, this is a family program, so let's keep that in mind. So go ahead.
I can't tell you what I really thought.
Well, I've got it written here.
We have 12 acres, but we're in the town limits of a little town of 60 people. So there's an Alliance line that went underground, probably, well, I guess they're all underground, but anyway, it went probably 1/8 of a mile from our place, from a town north of us down to Hudson. So we thought, well, that's great, we can hook up to it anytime, because like it says up here, our internet service was terrible. We had one of the services we were on had a dish that somewhere it was broadcast to Rock Valley, Iowa, to a tower on the elevator at Hudson, and to an antenna on top of the water tower at Fairview, and then to a dish on our house. And it would take nothing to interrupt that service. We'd be online and just be gone. And we requested to be able to switch to Alliance because the line was so close. But at that time, the PUC said, we're in a municipality and our existing service, CenturyLink, had control over our municipality. Well, when this grant came available through the state, they couldn't stop anybody from hooking up into any controlled area. So when Ross called, we just about went up and got him.
So can you elaborate and tell us a little bit more about the kind of, as far as your business and the impact of how it was, what it was like to try to run a business 5 to 10 years ago, and kind of the customer expectations in terms of how the internet or poor internet service impacted that? Any thoughts on that?
Well, real estate, if somebody would call, they wanted to look at a house or they wanted information, oh, I'll bring it up because we have data that we can get that from. And we'd be looking it up, and all of a sudden we lose service, so there we are. We have nothing, we couldn't even talk about it. So it's like, okay, my internet went down, I'll have to call you back later, and you'd wait, you know, for it to come back or whatever. So we'd call them, and complain about it. And one of the times they told me, it's like, okay, you have some gamers in town, and they're sucking all your power away from you. And I'm like, who's gaming in town? We live in Fairview. I know most of the people in town. I don't know any gamers.
Now you can start knocking on doors, did you?
So that was a struggle. Or it went down and you try and call and you get cut off and you had no phone service, you had nothing. You'd have to drive 3 miles up the hill. So we were on top of the hill so we'd have phone service because we didn't have phone service. And then they'd say all the stuff that we had to do to our computer to get it to running again. Well, I'm 3 miles on the hill. I can't do it. I'll have to call you back. So we did that a number of times. Next.
No, a few more questions for you, and then we'll keep going with you guys for a little bit, and then we'll go to some of our other panelists. How do you use internet in your home or business today with the new faster speeds? You know, what impact does that have?
Every minute of the day. If you have to look up something, you know, we can look it up. We have our booster on the greenhouse so we can be anywhere on the yard, which is awesome. They set that up for us. And so if somebody has a question about something, I can look it up right away and get back to them on that.
So full coverage on the greenhouse too, as people are.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
and everybody has service, so they can show me pictures of what they had for a planter, or anybody can ask any questions. I can look it up right away. Last night we were up on the roof of the greenhouse inside trying to patch a thing, and Dave's like, okay, we're out of tape, so don't forget we got to order tape when we get in the house. And I'm like, oh. So I ordered tape because by the time I get to the house, I forgot.
Roni, can I ask you a question? It sounds like this is impacting your business not only with the vendors that you get your supplies from, but your end users, the customer.
Yep.
So it's having two different types of economic impact on you trying to be successful.
Right, and helping our customers. Yep, providing it. You help us provide a service for our customers by being able to be so accessible with everything. Even like Venmo, or, because because we're in the dead zone, they can do nothing. And unless they're on my internet specific, but then they can go to the top of the hill and go through. But I can give them my Venmo stuff and they can pay me, for the flowers whenever. Otherwise it had to be strictly cash.
But even ordering stuff for your business.
Or classes. Even if we took online classes, we could never sign up for online classes because we would get cut off in the middle of it.
Ronnie, question? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, question for you on Venmo. Does that work pretty well?
Mm-hmm.
I've been asking my wife, I'm married to an accountant, and she says I don't need it. I don't know, I'm trying to get some testimonials that Venmo works for you.
You don't need the money.
Oh, is that what it is? Oh, okay. Can you tell us, when did you start receiving internet service from Alliance? When did you say that in the opening, and I might have missed it? Approximately, but
I would say it's been 2 years ago.
Couple years? Okay.
Approximately.
Okay. We could touch on some of that. So just going forward, if you had to share a sentiment with regulators, legislators, people that impact funding for broadband in our space, and you had to convince them why this is important, what would you tell them?
We have a small real estate office. Compared to greenhouses, we have 3 buildings, which is small compared to a lot of them.
Sure.
So knowing how it has affected ours, I can't imagine how much seeing these lines going through our area has helped other people. There's a lot of businesses out in the country, but even just the normal homeowners, you know, for their kids to be able to have access to online learning, they don't send homework books home with the kids, it's all online, you know, so it's amazing. It's affected us just amazingly. It's been great. The lines, our old company had lines that came into our town that were fiber optic, but they kept the old copper lines from the main base in town to our house, which we were told were some of the most antiquated lines in the country. So you can speed up all you want until you hit the brake, and you're just not going to get any better.
There was the bottleneck, that's the problem, right?
If we would have went to the main box, you know, half a mile away, we'd have good service.
Yeah,
Maybe.
exactly. I'd like to share a quote from Michael's interview with you, Roni, and see if you have any thoughts on it, but you said, "Grateful beyond words, we can't even tell you how wonderful that is. It's like having water. It's a need, it's a fact of life. You don't know how to put that into words. It's been great, and the improvement is amazing. We feel like big city slickers. We have such good internet." So that's a great quote. Thank you so much for sharing your story and spending some time with us today. Anything to add to that, Roni? Okay, all right. Great. Well, that takes us to the Steever House B&B. Some beautiful pictures online. I really enjoyed the picture on your website of you moving the house and the kind of the before and after. Pretty amazing. Is that all your own sweat equity, you and your husbands, or were you able to renovate that yourselves, or how did you go about it?
Yeah, that took about 3 years.
Wow.
Every evening, every weekend, every holiday, everybody we could rope into helping us.
Wow. Well, amazing transformation. It's a beautiful property. There's some images from Sara's property there. So I'd like to just share your bio here quick. Sara and John Steever have owned this Steever House Bed and Breakfast northeast of Lenox in Lincoln County since '97. Guest expectations have changed the past 10 to 15 years. Reliable internet is a must as vacationers wind down for the day, pull up their phones to scroll social media or watch a movie on Netflix. For many years, internet connectivity at the B&B has been frustrating and unreliable. On busy summer weekends, 14 guests could be trying to log on to the internet at once before Alliance moved in. Thanks to ConnectSD grants, Sara said the internet was frustratingly bad. But for the past year, connection has been fast and consistent. The guest complaints have stopped. So that's fantastic to hear. You want to tell us a little bit about your B&B before we get into the formal questions, and want to share that a little bit?
Sure.
Great,
sure.
Thank you.
So it's fun to be part of the hospitality industry. And I would say we probably had 25,000 people stay in our home. So we actually live on site. So when we had kids in high school, you can imagine the competition for bandwidth was pretty fierce because, you know, kids. And then you add guests on top of that, and then just our own behavior and wanting to be able to transact like a credit card transaction was always interesting. So the hospitality industry, it's been fun to watch people change their behavior over those 27 years. Like this is where people go for entertainment. You know, they maybe they don't have the expectations they used to have. We dropped cable a long time ago because people weren't watching cable at their house. You know, they were bringing it with them, whatever they were doing. So to be able to accommodate everyone hitting at the same time was a big deal. And people are really polite that come and stay in their home. They're not coming down to breakfast and like couldn't even finish the movie last night. They're not saying that. But when we did get good bandwidth in, and they're like, people we have that are repeat visitors would say, wow, this was so much better than when I was here last time. I'm like, when was that? Like 2 years ago. Well, yeah, that's about right. So we tried all sorts of, every new technology that would come out, we would try. And I think we tried 3 different live-in sites. We put a pole in, 30-foot pole once. We pointed it to Freeman. That was the first debacle. And if you'd install it in the wintertime, it would look pretty good until the leaves would come out on the trees. Literally, that spring was a problem. And then all through summer, in our busiest time, we have almost nothing for internet. And then pointed it to Beersford, I think we finally pointed it to T. We tried hotspots, we tried everything that came along, and I don't remember when the fiber first went across the front of our property that we could not tap into, but it was like this mirage in the desert. We were just about dead.
So close.
It's so close, I can see it there, and you can't do anything with it or touch it.
Sarah, so I've heard people complain about raking leaves, but never about them actually budding out. So that was an issue for you guys at that time. Yeah. Well, so you kind of described what your internet service was like, and so maybe describe how do you use the internet at your B&B today. What are your customers' expectations? When they in the hospitality business when they arrive on your property in terms of internet coverage and bandwidth and all those. You have a sense of that?
Yeah, you would like to think that people would travel with a book, or they would just look into each other's eyes for the entire evening, and that would be all they would want to do, but that is not what people do. They come and their expectation is they're doom scrolling or whatever they do, or watching a movie, and they're all bringing their own devices with them. Sometimes it's a laptop, but they're not bringing their own internet. The expectation is just like it is in town when they go stay at the Holiday Inn. They expect to have good Wi-Fi and good internet, and when you don't, it's you're trying to do every single thing you can think of to accommodate people. That's the entire industry, is to be nice and pleasant and give them a good experience. And so to have something that people take completely for granted, it is the equivalent of not having enough hot water, really, if you think about it.
It's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gotta have it.
Let's see, I think we've kind of touched on this, what you've noticed in terms of improvement since receiving the fiber optic internet. Maybe just from a global perspective, what do you think it means to have fiber internet access to rural businesses in general, in terms of from an economic development standpoint and just being able to do normal business activities? How would you assess that?
Oh man, I just learned not too long ago that there's actually I think it's called Coinbase. There's a Bitcoin mining facility in northern South Dakota. So companies like that are coming into the state that in the very, very rural areas, and they need bandwidth, and even just small entities like we're not a big entity at all, but we rely on it. And if you think about how many people might want to stay and work from home because they're trying to raise their children, and that's part of why we had a bed and breakfast, because we wanted to have one of us stay home with the kids. You cannot have a work from home business without the internet. You just can't. And to think about what it's like to be in a small town in South Dakota, and maybe you've lost your school, all those fundamental things that actually make an economically viable town start to dry up. To not have broadband, honest to Pete, it's like not having electricity. This is just the age that we live in, with everything that's changing in terms of artificial intelligence, and just like the Bitcoin mining example, it is fundamental to a modern society that you have to have that. So what a huge leap for our state to be able to bring it into rural areas. It's huge.
I wish my old colleague Vern could hear you now about how you're using the internet and the bandwidth that's required, and amazing. I think we kind of touched on this, but it may be for anyone, and then we'll shift to the pumpkin patch. But how important has that ConnectSD program been to you and others in your area? Either any of your neighbors that have been impacted by this, and kind of tell some of your stories. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so our son lives just an eighth of a mile down the road, and he's got a small little startup business.
Okay.
He's an engineer, and to be able to have enough bandwidth that he can actually relay it out to his shop is a huge thing. And it's just stuff that you would take for granted. I know our neighbors across the street have a small external building, and they make little healthy meals that they sell to some of the gyms and I think the Vera here in town. And they need to be able to have bandwidth for that. It's just even like you can't even do a credit card transaction. Just think about how crippling that is. For a long time, we did not take credit cards. And I don't know if you noticed, but people don't travel with checkbooks anymore, and they sure don't travel with cash. So we'll be sending people, well, here's an envelope, just send us some money. And I go,
What would I do?
yeah.
Here, I put it in an envelope. I just
And they're like,
you can see that they're going to send me a check.
really? You can't just take my card and make, no.
We're trusting in the Midwest.
Trusting individuals, yeah. Never got burned on it, but thank you. Yeah, it's pretty crippling.
Yeah. I just want to share a quote from your interview, Sarah, I hope you don't mind. I think it's important in terms of rural development regarding, fiber optic internet. We are one small example of having a better experience for people who come and stay with us. When I work from home, it's a better experience. When you think of other people who want to work remotely to start their own business but can't because they don't have the bandwidth, that's huge for rural development. It's a great equalizer for people. I thought that was a great statement. It's a great equalizer for people. You are at less of a disadvantage to those in the city. When you think about how much learning happens online, that could be a big leg up for families and for small businesses. Anything else to share regarding that quote? Or anything else about your B&B entering peak time, busy time now?
Yep,
I suspect?
heading into busy time.
Okay.
Come on out, we get people from 2 miles away and halfway across the world, so.
So people come to have an experience out in the country, but they still want to be connected.
I guess they come to watch Netflix.
Thank you for sharing your story and participating. Really appreciate it. Great. Well, Mark is next with the Big Stone Pumpkin Patch, and Mark really helped us out. We had another customer story to share with you, but the person had a conflict, so then we went back to the drawing board and reached out to Mark at the Big Stone Pumpkin Patch, served by ITC. So really appreciate you willing to be on the panel today. There are some images there of their property. Really cool. I love the website there. Then here's the bio, and then we'll get to some questions. Mark and Emily Mueller started the pumpkin patch in 2012 to pick your own pumpkin patch. Since then, they had hay rides, a jumping pillow, aerial train rides, a corn maze, a corn dig, and much more. What started with less than an acre of pumpkins is now 15 acres of entertainment, hosting 3,000 to 4,000 people each fall. So that's really impressive. So before we jump into the questions, Mark, would you be willing to share just kind of some general things about maybe your business and how internet's impacted you going forward?
All right, I got a lot of the same things that these other guys have discussed. The pumpkin patch it's just our fall thing. Looks like we need to update that because we probably get about 10,000 people or so.
Oh, wow.
We're in a smaller area, rural area, and so we just started it up for people to go find things to do. Parents want to take kids out and do things. So we started this whole deal a long time ago, and we've really grown it. We've added food, concessions, more stuff, and more time, and more stuff, so with the internet, so I farm. That's my main occupation, and then we have 4 kids. And so that's why we started this pumpkin patch. So I don't know. The trees, the leaves. We had not very good internet. We had very good internet. Then something changed, and then we're really struggling with wireless internet. We're 8 miles away from Millbank, South Dakota, so that's 3,500 people, and we struggled. And we're right on the state line, Minnesota, and we worked, and we kept getting the reasons we kept dropping. Leaves, it's cloudy, it's foggy, it's clear, and there's one tree in the way, let's cut that one down, let's put up a pole, let's put it on our barn, it was a struggle. And I would always go see Katie at ITC and say, at a farm show, Katie, when are we coming out here? Because there's a lot of us out where we live that are struggling, and I was trying to be really nice and polite, but I know there's some people that I know that weren't being nice and polite. And so anyway, finally we talked pandemic era, I saw John Wick, state senator from Big Stone, at the gas station, and I said, come on man, we gotta do something. I'm trying to teach 4 kids that don't want us to be teachers, and they want to be on internet, and they're taking stuff and they're dropping, and then the teacher says we can't log in, so we fail our test, so we have people sad in our house, we got parents mad in the house. And so anyway, I can go on and on. So we got going, and now it's been just phenomenal. We haven't dropped anything. We don't worry about weather, we don't worry about any of that stuff. I farmed, and so we did a grain handling project, and I have a dryer that's connected now. I sit in the combine and I watch that. If something happens, I know, and I can go do whatever I need to go do with that, or send the right person to go do it. So it's really changed our operation, family, our side businesses and my main business, so.
I'm the son of a farmer, and my dad had a very shaky dryer setup, and he'd be out in the field, and my job was to stand by the dryer. And I said, well, why do I have to do that? He goes, because it might start on fire. I said, well, what do I do? He said, put it out. I'm like, well, that doesn't sound very good. So if we've been connected, we would have maybe been able to address that in a different way. So you kind of described what your internet service was like prior to receiving ITC's fiber internet service. When exactly did you receive the service? How long ago was that?
So it's right at 2 years ago.
2 years ago? Okay. And how do you use, specifically, either in your farm business or at the pumpkin patch, maybe start with the pumpkin patch, how do your customers utilize the internet there? What's their expectations? Is it payment? Give us a sense of that.
It's mostly just like what was discussed up here.
Okay.
We were really struggling with everybody's bringing cards. That's the first question on our, and we need our social media to work too. And so that's the first question. If I'm out doing a hayride, first thing, I think I get 10 of them. Do you take cash? Do we have to find an ATM machine? Do you take a card? Well, it's pretty easy. We send the generic. We can take anything. And so we were dropping. We would never do the envelope thing. That's a great idea. But we do Square stuff, and Square would be able to knock you off, or you can scan it and do it at a later date. So when you got reconnected, you hoped that it would work. And we had a couple times when it wouldn't work. And some of it went through, some of it's like, well, hopefully we didn't scan too many credit cards. So it was a community service project instead of a business then. So that's been great. And then, working with suppliers and stuff, it's just, we're the same way. We're looking around, we're ordering stuff from people because we don't want to talk, or there's no point of calling it. We just go online and either send an email, get on their platform and order. So.
Yeah. Okay, great. I think you kind of talked about expectations customers might have. If you had to maybe convey the single biggest benefit of the impact of the service that you have now compared to before, what would you say it is?
Well, just reliability is the number one thing, because I don't know if we've had any issues since it's been put in. The speed's great. We have 4 kids and 2 adults, and let's call it 8 to 9 screens going at a time. For some reason, kids are on 2 screens at one time. And so, yeah, and it's just crazy. So, I mean, it's just reliable, it's fast. We used to watch movies and they'd buffer and you'd sit there and, you go find something else to do and hope it would catch up and hit play again and do the same thing. Now it's just, it's great, so.
Well, we've got maybe just a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes or so, if there's any questions out there from the audience or any additional stories that maybe some of the other providers want to share before we break for the box lunch. Anything from the group out there? Give you one more chance. Yeah, please.
I have one question. You talked about the combine. I was down in Nebraska at a deal, and you were talking about, so do you use your cell phone then to get that message from the dryer?
Yeah, I have the cell phone or an app that the dryer plugs into that sends me corn's out of the dryer, temperature's too hot,
So the
it
cell
ran
phone
out.
coverage is pretty good there too then?
Oh yeah, back to this whole thing is we were using hotspots and stuff, like where our pumpkin patch is a dead zone. And so we were really struggling with that. And then our dryer is, a ways away from the house, so we're just remote, but we couldn't do that because we didn't have good enough internet before. So, and now the other thing too with our farm stuff, I can roll in with my sprayer, it connects to the Wi-Fi, and I can download my application reports. I mean, that's all coming, and more speed, because I was told that if you can do it versus a cell phone plan, which is obviously another charge per month. But now I can just roll into the yard, it hooks up, downloads my maps, and I just gotta wait it takes a little bit of time because of their technology end of it, but
Sure.
it just makes, and that's just gonna keep getting bigger and bigger with the ag sector, so.
Yeah. Any other questions or statements from the, yeah?
You know what I love hearing? I mean, not only the monetary, the economic impact this has made to your businesses, but your quality of life. Because, you know, having to go back and never to run those transactions again. We, you know, couldn't get those pictures to maybe upload because it was too slow. That now, it took a couple hours, it's now taking like 30 seconds or a minute. You know, it just sounds like it's, you know, you're not having to go back. It saves you time and worry to redo something that could have been done right off the bat.
And we can say how much it benefits our businesses that we have fiber options coming to our properties now. But everybody here, if you have a house to sell, and if you don't have good internet service to it or fiber coming into it, you will eliminate at least a third of your buyers. They'll ask, is it available? If you say no, well, I can't operate my business, I don't want to live in this place.
I
So,
love that you're a realtor. I mean, really, I mean, that is the
so it affects more than just us.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point, Dave.
Well, and your guys' option too, I just think of like you had two, you know, you're a family that has two businesses. It's not like, that you were on location managing. It'd been different if like, one is, you're driving somewhere to go to the office, but your, you know,
Everything
life
comes out of our house.
was on, and it affected both of what you guys were bringing into your household income.
Yep.
Whereas it wasn't just one half and the other one go into work somewhere. It was both of yours. Yeah.
Any final thoughts from the panelists before we thank you for your, yeah, please. Lynn.
No, I mean, the grant thing is great because where we are at in the rural, we were the same way too. I forgot that, you know, we were a mile away from Minnesota, but we could not get this done. And I have a rental house that was not being able to be touched at all by anybody. And their fiber was, you know, right across the road. So without this, they would still be running a hotspot. We'd still be, I dang near wanted to get dial-up when all this stuff was going on. I'm like, why don't we just switch back dial-up?
That's desperation, folks.
Yeah.
Right there. All right. Well, you guys are tremendous. You did a fantastic job. We really thank you for sharing your stories with this group and your time, and you did wonderful. Please congratulate the panel.
Keeping this rolling, we wouldn't have that. I mean, you guys present it to people. Let them know how much easier life will be. Don't even hesitate to think about that, because it is. It's worth it. Every second of it's worth it.
Fantastic. We'll turn it over to Mike then.
I got the mic. Pretty good, wasn't it? You're not excused, for sure not. Senator Wick that you talked about, tremendous, huge advocate and supporter of broadband for us. I won't give you the details, but there was a threat of losing $30 million for broadband, and if it wasn't for him, along with some other senators as well. But so huge shout out to him and his work. And see, that's the other part about it, though, is that government's run by those who show up. And you were lucky enough to see him and catch him, and obviously he's in your community, so that was pretty cool. I was also going to ask about the realty question, because I've talked with a few other people that have had people from out of state who have called and said, what type of internet do I have, because I work from home. And now a lot of employers, they're actually requiring, if somebody's going to work remote and you move someplace, you got to run a speed test before you can live at that location. And so it's great to hear that's the same thing. So obviously in South, we want, you know, to be able to have people live wherever they want and work and play where they want.